Welcome to Toasty Gaming. Today we will talk about how Avowed and its developer Obsidian are a great example of how to not build hype around an upcoming release. There has been a lot of drama around the game's art director, but what I found most fascinating in this entire situation is how the company just failed to act in any way whatsoever. What I found even weirder is that most Americans, irrespective of their stance on the topic, seem to consider Obsidian's inaction in such crisis completely normal. In continental Europe or Asia, there would be proverbial heads rolling in such a situation. So, in this video, I want to outline how weird and completely unacceptable Xbox's and Obsidian's behavior in this situation actually are. Over the past 2 weeks, the first previews for Avowed were released, and despite most reviewers who got to play the first 6 hours sounding hyped, what we saw was rather meh. In a way, most of the community's comments about the game circled around Mass Effect. On the one hand, because Brandon Keener, the voice actor of Garrus, is going to voice a major character in the game, and on the other hand, because all the facial animations looked like they were taken straight from Mass Effect Andromeda. Nonetheless, things seem to be going okay for Obsidian, because they didn't really need to create a masterpiece. It's not like there is any competition for Elder Scrolls-inspired first-person RPGs, while there is a lot of gamers waiting for such a title. You could release a 3 out of 10 game and people would still buy it and leave positive reviews. But then disaster struck. It all started with pronouns being shoehorned into the game. After the disastrous reception of Veilguard, Xbox Game Studios and Obsidian tried to keep that topic out of the public discourse, but they failed. And soon the entire right wing, from Musk down to the rank and file in the trenches of the culture war, honed in on Avowed. Now, no matter whether you want to cram pronouns into everything or not, the intelligent response would be to shut up. But a single art director on the intellectual fast lane decided to pour some more gasoline into the raging fire, threatening to burn down his entire company. The White Savior's name is Matt Hansen, who promptly managed to get himself stuck up to the neck in a morass born of his own hubris when it was revealed that he proudly and publicly posted about preferring humans found on certain parts of the Dulux color chart to others. Poor lad must be really scared of looking into the mirror in the morning, and he can't even cover his hideous face with a more noble color because that would be a hate crime. What started out as a bad PR situation for Obsidian has by this point turned into a veritable disaster. Even Chris Avellone, one of the original founders of Obsidian, made a tweet suggesting young artists who got rejected by Obsidian in recent years to sue the company on grounds of racist hiring practices. Next up, there were whistleblowers coming forward and detailing how Obsidian has slowly turned into almost a dogmatic, monolithic company whose only goal is to further an extreme progressive agenda. Alright, so to sum up, if you're Obsidian, your art director has openly admitted to being racist while sitting in a position with hiring authority, your game is being criticized for using pronouns, something that played a relevant role in killing off Dragon Age Veilguard, and you have whistleblowers accusing you of acting like a cult. Now we can take a look at why Obsidian's and Xbox's inaction in this situation are so weird. As a company with more than 3 brain cells between all its employees, you might try to do some damage control. But Obsidian seems to be an especially gifted studio, so their only response was to start a draconian hunt for the whistleblowers. I believe that the reason for this seemingly brain-dead behavior is that Obsidian just hopes that this entire scandal will blow over and that Avowed will still manage to be a success because it releases without any competition. But there are 2 main flaws in this plan. First, Xbox and Obsidian have failed to do some absolute basics of market analysis, namely finding out who your customers are and then, based on that information, finding out who your competitors are. Avowed is comparable to Outer Worlds, which was a rather mediocre game. It might have sold well, but even at its peak it had half the players of Pillars of Eternity, another Obsidian game, and it is currently the Obsidian game with some of the worst player numbers on Steam. This shows us that despite the positive reviews, Outer Worlds wasn't actually as well received as you would think. The reason it still managed to sell well and build some hype was because it released into a niche with zero competition but a very high demand. It was a first-person RPG inspired by Fallout. There are no other modern games that fill that niche, not even Fallout 69 or whatever Bethesda calls it. Avowed is trying the same strategy while taking heavy inspiration from Elder Scrolls. There is only one problem with this strategy. Avowed releases in mid-February. You know which other first-person RPG releases in early February? Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Now, based on the gameplay from KCD2 and based on the gameplay from Avowed, which one do you think will win in a direct competition on who is the better first-person RPG? If Xbox's market research seriously believes that Avowed has even a slither of a chance to beat KCD2, especially with all the negative PR currently surrounding the game, they should all be fired. On top of that, it's not like Avowed is a unique enough game to make sure that they don't have to compete with KSD2 for potential customers, which means that they're probably going to be completely bodied by Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. The second flaw in the plan by Xbox to just allow this entire scandal to blow over is that this entire problem only turned that bad because high-ranking employees broke compliance rules and Obsidian utterly failed to reprimand them in any effective manner. Failing to enforce rules so openly will only invite further breaches of compliance. If your employees see that they can do whatever they want as long as it serves a certain political agenda, they will do whatever they want. This means that your chances of this scandal blowing over are rather slim because there is a high probability that someone from Obsidian will stoke the fires again. Now, you might wonder why I mentioned breaches of compliance. Well, from my experience, at least here in continental Europe, your behavior online and offline is supposed to be worthy of the company. Failing to adhere to this standard can even be grounds for termination. In the case of regular employment, that obviously doesn't apply to all actions and statements, but only the ones you make while being clearly connected to the company. If you post something on a random anonymous Twitter account, nothing will happen. But if you post something unacceptable with your full name and the company you work at in your bio, you will very quickly find out that the empty-sounding HR babble in your contract actually does have a meaning. Indeed, every company I know, or any organization that wants to be prestigious for that matter, has always had you sign off on a document in which you guarantee that you will act in a manner befitting your position and the organization, under threat of severe penalties if you fail to comply. These rules are indeed especially draconian in Austria. Certain jobs like lawyers are mandated to maintain the honor of the profession by law, a concept that reaches much further than the rules set by bar associations in other countries. As a lawyer in Austria, even just swearing in public will get you in front of a disciplinary court for besmirching the profession's reputation. The point here is that in continental Europe, but also in Asia, corporate employees, especially in respectable jobs or positions, are expected to behave in a respectable manner at all times, both online and offline. Whereas in the US, you have an art director openly going on a racist tangent, leaving his company open to legal troubles by admitting a crime, and there isn't even an internal investigation into his behavior. This is pathetic. If a ranking employee in any company here would have behaved this way, followed by such massive outrage, they would have been fired 3 times over at this point, and all of this would be followed by a classic corporate apology, maintaining that the employee's behavior was unacceptable and unbefitting of the company, and that his statements do by no means represent corporate opinions. On top of that, there would probably be an assurance that as a private enterprise, the company does not wish to comment on social issues or any political issues that don't concern the firm's operation. Yet in Obsidian's case, the company seems to tacitly approve the statements of its art director. In the end, statements made by an employee reflect on the company and its stances and opinions. That's why there are usually such stringent rules on how employees are expected to behave while being associable with their company, even if they aren't working at the time. Conversely, this means that Matt Hansen's racist post and overall disgusting behavior are an accurate representation of the company's opinions, and that his behavior is not just befitting, but indeed expected by Xbox and Obsidian. I find it surprising how this is considered acceptable in the US, especially considering that he is in a position of authority within his company. Imagine how anyone who isn't a far-left progressive ideologue must feel while working at Obsidian. I generally fail to comprehend how a company having such an open political agenda is being considered acceptable in the US. This isn't normal in virtually any other part of the world, except maybe China, but for different reasons. Sure, things like Pride Month are being pushed by HR around here as well, but they never reach levels as extreme as in the US. Our companies, but also public institutions like universities, are expected to at least maintain a veneer of political neutrality. An employee posting that they prefer some minority like Slovenes to the Austrian majority would be a massive scandal, Heck, even large parts of the left wing around here wouldn't accept such behavior. Hell, even the Slovene minority in Austria wouldn't support such a statement. And don't even get me started on Asia. I know from colleagues who spend time in China that any statement that even gets close to diversity, equity, and inclusion will get you laughed out of the room at best. The same goes for places like Japan, South Korea, or Singapore. If Matt Hansen would have posted his statements while working for a studio in Japan or China, stating that he prefers black artists to Chinese or Japanese artists, he probably wouldn't just be fired, there'd be an angry mob trying to lynch him. Yet when he does this in the US, obviously with a slightly different context, his behavior is considered completely okay apart from an internet shitstorm. I know you Americans are still feeling very sorry about slavery, we never had that stuff in Austria so I can't really relate, but you can't seriously just ignore someone being openly hateful towards a sizable part of your population. Obsidian didn't even issue a public apology or at least make some form of statement regarding this disaster. The point I'm trying to make here is that this isn't normal, dear American viewers. A company this openly hating on a sizable chunk of its home country's population and then just getting away with it isn't normal anywhere else in the world. This is the main reason why I think Avowed just might flop. Even if the antics of Matt Hansen and Obsidian will be ignored in the US market, they sure as hell won't be ignored in other markets around the globe. Here in Austria, not even the left-wingers I know, who were originally interested in the game, plan to pick up Avowed outside of maybe checking it out on Game Pass. The reason for this is that nobody outside of the US needs another game where some progressive Americans try to force some progressive American politics into a piece of entertainment. Even most of our country's left-wingers can relate to the stuff the American woke movement is trying to push. This means that if a video game seems to be the glorified group therapy session for some American progressives, consumers outside the US are going to view it with distrust. It's just like with the Veilguard, where even the comment sections of left-leaning German games media were flooded with subscribers criticizing the woke messaging. The problem isn't that people believe pronouns make a game automatically bad. It's that if a developer employs people like Matt Hansen and seems to actively support their politics, there is a concern that the focus isn't creating a fun and enjoyable game, but rather some political sermon packaged as a video game. In Central and Eastern Europe, there is the strong belief that politics are a private matter. This has various historical reasons, but that's just how it is. You usually don't even tell people your rough political views. It's considered almost taboo. In the workplace, but especially in universities, schools, or institutes, it is expected that a certain level of political neutrality is maintained at all times. The same thing goes for our news. It would be unthinkable that our newspapers would officially endorse any political candidate. Therefore, we generally consider that extremely heated way of forcing ideology into everything and turning the public sphere into a massive political war zone as quite radical and foreign. People would be just as concerned if someone was actively trying to force some far-right talking points into a video game. That stuff just never happens. In the end, I am unsure whether Avowed will manage to somehow salvage the situation. This entire scandal just once again reminded me of how much more heated the political debate has become over in the US and how far the goalposts for acceptable behavior over there have shifted compared to the rest of the world. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Cheers!